Hello and welcome to another SonicLAB. My name's Tosh from Wish Productions, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Synthmaster version 2.7 virtual instrument from KV331 Audio. Now the track you're listening to is a little test that I like to do when I'm given a new synth to play with. Give myself half an hour in Ableton to try and throw a tune together using the basic sounds of the instrument. So what you're hearing is just the factory presets. There's no external plugins or effects, just the stuff that comes on board the instrument. The idea being, see how easy it is to work with without reading the manual, and get an idea for the basic vibe of the instrument. What kind of sounds does it make? So that's a little taste of some of the sounds in the factory preset. Now this thing ships with, in standard form, a factory bank of about 1100 presets. And then this is the everything bundle here, where you've got a whole load of extra banks, which you could buy individually, or in the bundle you get them at a great discount. And that brings up, I think it adds another 1,750 sounds. So you've got this massive, massive library of sounds. And let's just have a quick listen to the kind of sounds that we've got. Let's dive down here. Now you can use the menu to find random ones, and if we clear the browser filters, just use that to dive through. We've got sequencers, we've got arpeggiated sounds, we've got emulations of classic synth sounds. You name it, it's there. There's so much in there. And it's very easy to search through and find stuff you're looking for. So we've got all these categories of instrument type. So let's look for some analog, bass, acid style. What do we get? And also what's nice is that most of these presets have been mapped already to these easy parameters, which give you some very easy control over some of the main synth parameters. And I've mapped these to my MIDI controller as well, which is very easily done with a right click. Now, if all this wasn't enough, all those presets, a nice little feature they've got here is this online preset setup, so other users can upload their presets and you can have a listen to them and play with them, and of course you can upload your own. So plenty of options there with presets, and you get a very brief idea there of the sounds available. What's behind Synthmaster? How does it work? So let's have a look at the architecture. Now, Synthmaster consists of two parallel layers, and each of those layers, as accessed by these buttons here, contain two oscillators with a pair of modulators for each oscillator, two filters which can be configured in a variety of ways, series, parallel, or split, and then a chain of insert effects, which can comprise any of a whole series of high-quality effects here, and in any order. And then on top of that, you've got a global set pair of send buses, which again can contain up to 5 insert slots, and you've got some global LFOs, so you can modulate any of the parameters within the synth. And then within each layer you've got some sort of local LFOs, which include envelope generators, multi-stage envelopes, and LFOs. So you've got a massive range of options there for modulating. And over here, this little panel will show you the modulations that you've got set up. Now you've got a possibility of something like 95 sources and over 650 targets for modulation, so you can create some very complex modulation setups. Now let's look at this panel here, because this gives you the overview of your synth. So we've got controls for the kind of things you'd expect, like polyphonic mode, monophonic mode. If I just go to a new blank preset, so we just got the basic oscillator sound, we can see exactly what we've got going on here. So yes, you can set up simple things like slides. You've got a nice little unison feature, so we can have multiple voices. If we go back to polyphonic, do a pad sound, you can spread them out and create some nice interesting thick sounds. And that's just using a basic sine wave oscillator there already and creating some interest. Now you've got an arpeggiator built in, which operates as you'd expect, pulling these little bars down to change the velocity, and you can set up things like that, change durations. One thing I don't really like is that you can't just click and sweep to create like a curve on there. You have to pull each bar individually, which, you know, it looks all right when you're zoomed in like this, but if we go to zoom out mode, you can see it's actually quite fiddly, especially if you've got a lot of steps. But that's just a minor irritation, really. So the arpeggiator has some various modes. You've got chord mode. You can trigger a sequence. You can load in. You can create your own MIDI sequences. And play around with that. And you've got things, this arpeggiate mode, which is just another way of approaching the way you control the arpeggiator, based around offsets within the range of keys that you're pressing. Pretty handy there. So that's the basic structure. Now, if we look in depth at the heart of the synth, which is the oscillator, that's controlled by this panel here. Now what you have is this window where you select your waveform. And if we just reset the preset, so we're back to sound of just the oscillator, you can click through to get any number of different sounds, or you right click and you get access to the menu, which shows you all the possible options for waveforms here. And what they've done, which is really nice, is included a massive selection here of classic waveforms. So brilliant synthesis starting points. Now, this is just the basic oscillator. You've got things like additive, which is 8 basic oscillators in parallel. And you can select different waves for each of those. Select their levels, detune amounts, pan. If we load up a preset here, you can see quite a massive sound there already. You've also got things like vector. So basically that's 4 of those basic oscillators, and you can morph between them just by pulling that one parameter around. And of course you can change any of the waveforms. And you've got this nice wavetable synth as well, so we can build up a bank of waveforms just by right clicking and selecting from the menu. And then use the index parameter to morph between them. And then we've got controls here for, you know, fine tuning, pan, phase. We've also got this voice thing, so we can set up each oscillator can have up to 8 voices. So we can then create these nice wide, interesting sounds. As I mentioned before, you also have these modulators or sub-oscillators, which you can use to do phase, frequency, pulse width, amplitude, or ring modulation of the oscillator. And setting that up is very simple. Just click on here to choose the modulator. So in this setup, we've got modulator 1, which is this modulator, which has access to all those waveforms as well. So that's now phase modulating our oscillator. And I can change that to frequency modulation. And create some quite interesting effects there. We've also got post modulation here, so we can do some amplitude modulation. If I go back to sine wave. And then we set our frequency multiples. And we've got some ring modulation. All manner of interesting sounds there. Now let's just reset that. And as if that wasn't enough in terms of creating sounds, we have this algorithm panel which allows us to do things like, well, it's currently set to low pass, which does what you'd expect. Also, if you right click on this panel, you can see the spectrum, which illustrates quite nicely what you're doing. Let's go back to waveform. Now, more interestingly, you've got these algorithms like bend, which allows you to warp your sound in quite interesting ways. And this one I really like. It's sync. Applying a sync window to the sound. You can get some quite nice effects. So that's the oscillators, and there's up to 4 modulators which can be applied to those oscillators in various combinations, as you can see here, mod 1 plus 1, mod 2, or in multiplicative terms. Also, that output modulation here, you can either be multiplying or adding it to the signal. And one other thing I should mention is you've got the option of external audio being used as a modulator, so that can come in, and it can even be used as an oscillator. If you see in the menu here, audio in, and it can create an envelope follower or a MIDI note trigger. So amazing array of options there to work with. Let's go back to let's use the Super Saw preset there. Now, that's the oscillators. Next stage in the chain are these filters. So you've got 2 filters. Let's click that one on. Each filter has a huge range of options in terms of configuration. They can either be digital or analog modeling. So in analog modeling, I think they've modeled the ladder style filters. You've got obviously all these options for high pass, low shelf, high shelf, multi-mode, so continuously variable, and then these dual multi-mode filters. We go back to low pass. You notice here there's a menu for non-linearity, so you can change the amount of non-linearity or the level of modeling of non-linearities. That going to high increases your CPU usage. It allows you to get some very nice analog-ish tones. You've also got the option to add some distortion to your filter, and you can do that either before, after, or inside the filter. Let's drive that, bring the resonance down. You can hear that there. You can change the bias, and you can even wave shape that distortion. Now the interesting one for me is inside. I quite like the way this sounds. Great sounding filters. In the digital domain, I quite like this comb filter. Take the distortion off. Lots of interesting sounds to be had there. Also in digital mode, this limiter becomes active, so it helps, preserve your ears in case you push things too hard. You've also got this little boost button, which just cranks up the gain. So under some filter settings, that might actually be quite useful. And you've got 2 of those filters to play with, so you can set up some quite interesting combinations of analog and digital emulated filters. And then bearing in mind you can parallel them, or split them with 2 oscillators being modulated by different sounds. So you can get some crazy layers on the go here. So that's the filters. Now the remaining things here are the modulation panel here. Now this is consists of envelope generators and LFOs. Now this is local to the layer, so this allows you to modulate parameters within the layer. Whenever you set up a modulation, it will appear here in the modulation matrix. So what we've got here, if you look, is layer 1 voice volume, ADSR envelope 1, which is this ADSR envelope. And we've got 4 of those to play with, and then some 2D ones, some multi-stage, some LFOs, and key scaling. And these can be applied to any parameter, and it's very easy to do this. You just, for example, let's take the filter 1, and take color frequency. And we want the modulation source to be from the voice ADSR envelope 1. Now you see it appears there, layer 1, filter 1 cutoff ADSR envelope 1. You need to actually increase the gain, so that's the amount that it applies the envelope to the filter. Then if we do something like increase the, you can hear there how we've modulated it. If I do it the other way around, very easy to do, set up these modulations. Now you've got these LFOs here as well that we can set up to any parameter. So for example, if we went back to our wavetable synth, and I wanted to map my index parameter to the voice LFO1. Now we've got to remember to adjust it there. And then if we set up some there you go, you can hear the modulation working there. So as you can see, very, very powerful. We can set up so many different combinations. It's just the sky's the limit, really. You've also got these LFOs out here, which you can apply in the same way. You map them to any parameter within the synth, so that could work on effects parameters, for example. Speaking of which, we haven't actually applied any of these. Let's just set some of this up. Go back to our Supersaw additive synth. And then let's have a look at the send buster. So nothing's switched on over here. So this controls the layer inserts that you see here. So you can see I've switched them all on there. If I go back to the effects, you can see that they're all just duplicate controls. So we'll take those effects off and we'll switch on reverb. And we've got some great quality effects here. We've got compression, tremolo, a nice reverb. Make that nice and big. As I mentioned earlier, you can also map your easy controllers and save that within the preset. And there's a nice option here to auto assign easy parameters. So it works out what are the most common things and sets them up for you ready to go. Now, there's so many features in this synth and I can't really pack it all into this little review. And there's nice little touches that are, just very briefly mentioned. You've got this very easy way of changing the velocity response of the keyboard. Things like extra skins, you can reconfigure the skins for different layouts, and some control over a lot of the way the synth looks and performs. So all in all, it's a very, very powerful package. Speaking of which, we should probably mention CPU usage. Now there is a CPU usage meter down there which disappears when you go near it. I'm not sure what that actually represents in terms of physical value, but it does go up when you play, and the more keys you press, the higher it goes. Obviously, polyphony is going to have a big impact on your CPU usage, but there's a few other things to bear in mind. Now, if you use the Unison Voicing here, what that does is it replicates all the modules however many times for however many voices. So that will increase your CPU usage quite substantially. A nice little touch that they've added to get around that is the ability to have the multiple voices, which we saw earlier. And what that means is just the oscillators are replicated rather than the whole chain of modules. It's a much more efficient way of getting that big multi-voice sound. Now, also, in terms of the analog filters, I think I mentioned this already, that the non-linearities, depending on the level of detail that you go with that model, your CPU usage will ramp up. And the other thing that will have an impact is up here, the audio engine quality. The default is draft, which is good for tracking and sorting, getting your sounds down. But they recommend best quality for printing, which basically increases the oversampling. So that will obviously put up your CPU usage. Now, I've been running this on a i7 Mac Mini, had multiple instances open in Ableton. I haven't had any problems whatsoever with any of the patches that I've tried. So I don't think CPU usage is a major issue with this, unless you're going to be running a lot of different instances of it. So there you have it. That's Synthmaster Pro. A fantastic synthesis package, I think. Whether you're a sound designer or a dance music producer or just a synth enthusiast, there's so much in there. It's very hard to fault. I mean, if I was to come up with some negatives, the UI is maybe a bit plain. I mean, personally, it doesn't bother me, but other people have commented that they don't like the way it looks. I've already mentioned things like some of the controls are a bit fiddly and could be easier to use. The only other thing would be the complexity. It's not something that's very easy to just pick up and run with out of the box. Obviously, this does depend on your level of experience that you've had with soft synths, but there are a few things that aren't immediately obvious that take a bit of digging around to work out. Other than that, there's absolutely nothing else I'd say against it. I think it's a fantastic package. Now, it's available through the KV331 Audio website, and they're currently running some special offers. It's at the time of this review, it's coming up to Black Friday, and there's a sale on, so you can buy this at substantial discount. And they also run seasonal sales throughout the year, so there's plenty of opportunity to catch a bargain. And also at the moment they've got the Synthmaster player, which is basically the synthesizer, but without the option to tweak all the parameters that you've seen. It's just allows you to play the presets and adjust a handful of parameters. But if you're not interested in going deep into synthesis, it's a great option. And at the moment it's only $9, which has to be the audio bargain of the moment. So a bit of a no-brainer there. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this review. I hope you found it interesting and it's given you a good overview of what Synthmaster's capable of. Thanks for listening. I've been Tosh from Widge Productions, and I will catch you on the next review.